everyone, this is Ali John Chaudhary, psychotherapist, and I'm so glad to be here today with Fern Schumer Chapman, author, because today's episode is going to be about what is a healthy sibling relationship. So, in our quest to understand various aspects associated with sibling estrangement, there comes a time when we may start to ask what a healthy and nourishing sibling relationship can look like. So, in this episode, we'll focus on those necessary ingredients that constitute the mixture necessary for us to see just what can be an end goal for us as a recipe for having a healthy connection with a sibling. So, Fern, it's great to have you here. Thanks for being here.
Right, great to be here. Yeah, I was just thinking while you were talking that, you need eggs, you need butter, you need these fundamental materials, ingredients in order to have a healthy relationship. And what's interesting in my coaching is I often am asked, what is a healthy relationship? What does it look like? How does it feel? And the reason is that many clients and many who are estranged have never experienced a healthy relationship. So they were raised in these chaotic or abusive homes, and then they become adults and often replicate those dynamics. And unfortunately, dysfunction begets dysfunction. So they don't know what a healthy relationship feels like or looks like. And
Yeah.
here's where we're going to fill in the gap.
Absolutely. I think that's so important to name, right? Because I have clients as well that are consulting me for similar reasons as well when it comes to that, especially going to therapy and working on some of these aspects in terms of how to make an unhealthy relationship more healthy and such. So, so let's start with point number one. I think this is a good segue into that. So, point number one is repair and resilience. Now, the core idea out of this one is that conflict is, of course, inevitable, right, with anybody, but the health of a sibling relationship is measured by how well siblings repair and recover, right?
Right. It's always rupture and repair in relationships. And when there's a commitment, you stay in the game.
Exactly, right? So, healthy reparation involves apologies that are sincere paired with changed behavior, right? That's really important that when you're showing up in a relationship that you essentially allow yourself to recognize that if there's something that was said or done that was wrong or that didn't go in a healthy type of way to simply apologize and recognize that and such.
Mhm.
Mhm.
The challenge is that when in childhood we have been mistreated with silent treatment or any sort of shutdown, that becomes the go-to. And in adult relationships, if it's a partnership, it basically leads to divorce. And if it's a sibling relationship, it leads to estrangement.
Right? Exactly. And I want to mention this that it's not weakness to apologize. In fact, tending the olive branch is a sign of willingness to buy peace and such, right? So I think that that's important also when it comes to learning resiliency, right? Because resilience through conflict is another important point to consider in this when we're repairing and such, right? That disagreements don't need to define the relationship. It's the ability to bounce back that really makes the difference,
Well, we've talked about this before, and it's the growth mindset.
right?
So instead of taking it as a personal flaw and assault that you made a mistake, the attitude that will lead to growth is to say, tell me more.
Right? Deepen the conversation, right? So that leads us to that next point that is all about reparation here, naming rivalry, right? Acknowledging old patterns of competition without letting them dominate adulthood, right? So being able to recognize that, yeah, maybe there's some of that going on sometimes, right? Just simply naming it, right? Naming sometimes these aspects that sometimes there's a bit of a one-up attitude sometimes and such, right? And that's not a sign of weakness to be able to name that. It's simply recognizing something that can happen, I think, in sibling relationships especially.
Yeah, and I always think about humor as something that helps to accept some of the differences and some of the rivalry between you. If you can make a joke out of it,
Yeah.
it is a little easier to take.
Right, that's a good mature defense mechanism, actually. Yes, I
We'll
wrote
get
about
to
that.
we will get to defense mechanisms.
Yes, yes, exactly, right. So that's really, really important. So yeah, so of course there's forgiveness as a practice as well, right? Like we said, to move forward and such, right? It doesn't imply erasing the past, but really choosing to simply continue journeying together in a forward type of manner. And I think that's especially important when it comes to making repair attempts.
Right, to communicate that you have the desire and the willingness to do what it takes to stay in this connection.
Yeah, very important and such. So I think that conflict doesn't need to end a relationship, right? Instead, if there's a willingness to circle back, apologize, maybe try again in some ways, if you're feeling safe to do so, of course, then it's absolutely fine to work with some of these concepts to be able to harmonize and heal a sibling relationship.
Of course, this is all assuming that you've asked yourself the tough questions about whether you should be in this relationship. If you have answered some of those questions, which we've raised before, with a negative response, then you don't want to pursue all this to begin with.
Exactly, right? Safety first, right? Emotional, mental, physical, spiritual safety, all of that is very important. And we've talked about that as well, right? When it comes to that. So, point two is belonging and shared meaning, right? And I think that's important for us to get into as well here, right? The core idea here is basically that siblings are often the keepers of family history, right? We remember what happened with mom and dad and such, and you can come back to that every now and then, right? And healthy bonds are strengthened by creating new shared experiences while honoring the old ones. So there's room to add and such, right?
Yeah, our shared historians are our siblings, and they provide a foundation. And if you can sustain that relationship throughout your entire life, that is actually a cornerstone of well-being.
Yep. Yeah, very important, right? Shared memories, revisiting childhood stories, family rituals, or inside jokes, right? Like we were saying earlier about humor, right?
Mhm, yeah.
So, right, and creating new traditions, right? It's not just about looking at the past, but it's actually being able to build into the future, right? So, planning sibling-only trips if you're feeling safe. I've
Mhm.
had somebody basically that talked to me about this, about getting together with a sibling, and we were working on this particular aspect and seeing how, of course, that could continue to go in a healthy and safe way. Making specific phone calls on a regular basis, or having a shared project of some sort can also help in creating new traditions.
As a sister to an only brother, shared activities and recreation are a big help because brothers and sisters might relate a little differently than sisters and sisters. Um, so my brother and I use biking as a way to do something physical and connect and talk to repair our own relationship during our year of reconciliation.
Right? And that's great. That's great that you had like a shared activity of some sort to create a shared living experience, right? So playfulness and humor, we talked about the importance of humor, but also playfulness, right? Keeping it light, right? Finding ways that you can just free flow in some ways, because when you're laughing, basically, it's really a good way to keep the relationship light and joyful, especially,
Yeah, it's the grease.
right?
Yeah.
Exactly. Moments of belonging, of course, small gestures like remembering birthdays, checking in during milestones. And really, what you're saying when you're doing this is that you matter to me, right? It's the message you're sending when you're doing this. So, really, in a thriving relationship, there's a sense of belonging through shared history, humor, or new traditions. And without that, the bond can feel hollow or one sided. So, that's important, of course, that there be a mutuality that is fed in this bond, especially.
Which is a spotlight on why the estranged struggle so much with the question of should I send a birthday card?
Right? Very big question because it really, really is symbolic of greater things as well when it comes to that. So,
Right. A
so,
belonging or not.
right? Exactly. So, all right. So, the third point here is respect and autonomy, right? And the core idea here is basically that healthy adult siblings relationships balance closeness with independence, right? And that's really, really important when it comes to that, right? And I think one of the first things here is boundaries, right? Respecting differences in lifestyle, values, or parenting choices, especially, right? It's okay to disagree. It's okay that there be differences, right?
Right. I think I saw on the page a meme or something that said boundaries are not walls, they're doors that tell you when you can come in.
I like that. Yes. There's so much good wisdom actually being shared, I think, on the Facebook page, of course, sibling estrangement, sharing, coping, connecting. So always a good place to go to get support and be able to boost ourselves, especially in a safe space like that. So influence versus control, right? Offering advice without imposing it, right? Really important when it comes to the concept of respect and autonomy, right?
Yeah, I think that's the place where you have to ask, are you asking me for a
Hmm.
suggestion or advice?
Exactly. And that's important, right? Because a lot of times we can really go really fast into wanting to give advice or here's what I would do without necessarily having it warranted or welcomed, right? So really
Well, and
important.
I just want to say real quickly, there's a real danger in fixing everybody else.
Yeah,
Yeah, people don't receive that well.
no, exactly, right? And there's this old saying, right? You don't wake up somebody that's fast asleep, right? So sometimes people don't necessarily want to be doing what you're doing necessarily, right? It's okay that they do them and we do us, right?
Right.
So flexibility across life stages, right? Adapting as siblings marry, have children, or take on caregiving roles, right? So there's going to be changes when it comes to life stages, right? Some people might be more predominant, more present in some cases. Other cases, they might be a little bit more in the background because of the busyness that they have, maybe with new tasks, new life roles. And it's not an insult to us that they step back. It's not an affront or anything. It's really just sometimes life stages that happen that cause people to be busy.
And these life stages are the most perilous moments in sibling relationships because the roles change. And most estrangements occur when the roles change.
Yeah, yeah, very important to consider that, of course. And celebrating differences, right? Seeing individuality as enrichment and not threat, right? And I think that's a big one too, because I often have to remind people just because you disagree, you have a difference in opinion, it's not a sign of disrespect, right? You can disagree, and that's absolutely okay. It doesn't invalidate us that people have their own point of view on certain things, right?
I come back to my earlier point. Tell me more.
Right. So in essence, here, healthy siblings honor each other's differences in life choices. They influence without controlling, and they adapt as life stages change. So very important to consider that when it comes to this point of respect and autonomy. So number four is care and reliability, right? And the core idea here is at the heart of siblinghood is the sense that I can count on you, right? And that's so important, right? That we have that because I think one of the first points here with being able to do so is friendly inquiry, right? Asking questions that show genuine interest, not obligation.
Right. And not just being reflectively responding or being self-directed in your response. In other words, oh, that happened to me when,
Yeah,
which is a real common go-to.
right? Exactly. So really important that we foster emotional safety, right? Being a safe space for vulnerability without judgment,
Mhm.
right? And it's okay to talk about our experiences, but also being able to make sure that we don't condemn somebody, right? And that we're able to hold that, even if there's a difference, being able to hold that together actually is a sign of emotional resiliency. So
Well, it's also a sign of unconditional love.
right? Exactly. So it's very important to be able to foster that type of attitude, especially so that way that helps to be able to go deeper, as you're saying. Tell me more, right?
Right.
So consistency also, even if contact is infrequent, reliability in times of need builds trust. And that's important, right? It's not because you don't see each other necessarily as often that the relationship isn't solid. It can very much be solid, right? Especially when you get together. And I have some friends, for example, that it feels like yesterday when I get together with them. I see them, on a regular basis during the year, but not necessarily as often. And I find that what happens is we're really happy to see each other mutually, all of us, and it really, really feels good. And I really feel that sense of trust with them, especially. And we can have that with a healthy sibling relationship, provided that consistency is there, right?
Yeah, you can pick up where you left off.
Exactly, exactly. And reciprocity, right? Both siblings contribute effort, like we said, initiating calls, offering help, or showing up, right? It's the back and forth that makes that it works in that sense, and that can ensure that type of care and reliability. So being able to do that, being able to be present and taking the opportunity, right? We often talk about how siblings sometimes miss the opportunities that are in front of them and such. And it's really about being able to take advantage of those opportunities to deepen, strengthen, and show up.
And when that reciprocity doesn't exist, it's important to state your needs.
Yeah, very important and such. So, in essence, here in an ideal sibling bond, care is shown through consistent presence, emotional safety, and reciprocity, right? Both siblings contribute to the relationship. So, these are the four elements that I think are important that we want to talk about today, especially to help our viewers see what is a healthy relationship.
And I would add no imbalance of power.
Yes, right? Exactly. Making room for each other, right? In that
Right,
sense, right? So
right,
if you do that, then yes, very much important that both feel that they're equals in the relationship.
right.
Hmm.
And there will be ruptures. And so there is a mechanism to address these differences that works very well. And actually, it's based on something called the dignity model, which is a model that's used with warring parties in a genocide. So I think it might work for siblings.
Hmm.
Um, Sit down together, face to face. And by the way, no texting, face to face.
Yeah,
Listen without interrupting, without challenging each other's stories, acknowledge each other with empathy and the other person's hurt and anger and alienation. Stress and act on your willingness, desire, and hope to create a mutual bond. And finally, letting go of the anger, not sitting in it.
that's so, so important, right? Instead of dehumanizing, let's rehumanize, right?
Right. Right.
So this has been a wonderful talk we've had, Fern. I'm really glad that we've gotten together today for this. So we're almost out of time. So let's talk about resources, Fern. What would be your number one resource at this time?
Well, I do coaching, and if you're confused about what a healthy sibling relationship should look like, please reach out.
Yeah, absolutely. And my number one resource at this time is the Sibling Estrangement Support Group on Zoom. I'm also offering some workshops right now, also on emotional regulation strategies and such. I've developed a tool that can be helpful with regards to this. And that isn't offered, I think, in any estrangement community. Plus, I have the Navigating the Stages of Grief workshop with respect to sibling estrangement. So this is also happening. If you want to get in touch with me or look at that on the web page there that's on screen, then that will be helpful to go and get some extra resources with me if you'd like. So, Fern, this has been a great episode. I'm really glad that we've been able to talk about this. This is something that's been in the making for a long time, and it's certainly going to be helpful for our viewers.
Okay, well, wonderful to talk.
Yes. So you take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Okay, bye.
Bye.